the ancient world wasn't straight. It wasn't gay either. It was something far messier, because most ancient societies didn't sort people into heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual, or transgender categories the way we do today. They sorted people into citizens and foreigners, free and enslaved, masculine and feminine, respectable and shameful, adult and adolescent. Who you desired mattered, but who did what to whom and where you stood in the social order usually mattered more. This creates a real problem whenever someone claims an ancient civilization accepted queer relationships. Accepted which relationship exactly? Between two equal adult citizens? Between a wealthy man and someone enslaved who had no real ability to refuse? Between women? Between a ruler and a favorite? Was it celebrated, tolerated, quietly mocked, or simply never discussed? The answer can shift completely depending on which detail you change. Ancient Greece usually gets presented as the obvious success story. Athens had male lovers, homoerotic art, the poet Sappho, philosophical dinner parties where men debated the nature of love. On the surface, it looks like a rainbow paradise with marble columns. Then you look closer at the actual rules. Classical Greeks generally didn't think of sexual orientation as a fixed identity that defined a person's whole character. Desire toward men or women didn't automatically sort someone into a permanent category like gay or bisexual. Greek art and literature openly acknowledged same-sex attraction, especially between men. It wasn't unspeakable, and could even be framed as beautiful, educational, or heroic. But acceptance was tightly structured by age and status. The most documented pattern in several Greek city-states involved an adult male citizen pursuing an adolescent boy. The older partner was the active pursuer. The younger was the admired object of desire. Greek writers like to frame this as more than physical, as mentorship, education, the cultivation of virtue. That framing is doing a lot of quiet work, though. Almost all surviving sources were written by elite men describing a system that benefited elite men. What the younger partner actually experienced is far harder to recover. Even in Athens, an adult male citizen had to guard his public masculine reputation carefully. Being seen as sexually passive could bring real ridicule and political damage. A man could desire other men and remain fully respectable, but only if his role in the relationship preserved the social hierarchy. The real question wasn't, did you desire a man? It was, did this make you look subordinate? Athens could praise male beauty in poetry while aggressively policing adult masculinity. It could weave male-male desire into philosophy while denying women any political citizenship. It could celebrate noble love between free men while giving those same men sexual access to people they enslaved. This wasn't modern equality arriving early. It was a completely different system of inequality, just one that happened to include same-sex desire inside it. Plato's Symposium captures this tension perfectly. In it, several speakers offer competing theories of love. The comic playwright Aristophanes tells his famous myth that humans were once double-bodied beings, split in half by Zeus, each half forever searching for its missing counterpart. Some original beings were male-male, some female-female, some male-female. The myth frames same-sex desire as a natural search for a missing half. It sounds strikingly modern, but keep reading, and the dialogue never establishes anything like marriage equality or civil rights. It's philosophy, comedy, and social performance, voiced through several different characters with different views. Even Plato's own position on same-sex relations shifted across his writings. Ancient texts are witnesses to a debate, not the results of a poll. Still, the symposium proves something real. Male same-sex desire could be discussed openly among educated Athenians as a serious subject tied to beauty, love, and truth. Then there's Sparta. Later writers described bonds between older and younger men as part of Spartan military training, though scholars still debate how sexual these relationships actually were. Spartan culture prized intense loyalty between men, but Sparta also demanded marriage and children from every citizen. Whatever a man did with another man never canceled his duty to produce the next generation of Spartans. The state was flexible about affection. It was far less flexible about population numbers. Thebes offers the most dramatic example of all: the Sacred Band, an elite military unit traditionally described as 150 pairs of male lovers. The reasoning was simple. Lovers would fight fiercely beside each other and feel far too ashamed to show cowardice in front of the person whose opinion mattered most to them. Greek writers didn't assume love between men made soldiers weaker. They believed it could make them formidable. Greece, though, was never one unified civilization with one unified sexual policy. Athens, Sparta, Thebes, and Crete all differed from each other, and customs shifted across centuries, and women remain frustratingly hard to see in this record. Sappho, writing on the island of Lesbos around 600 BCE, composed lyric poetry filled with longing and desire toward women. Poetry so influential, it gave us the words sapphic and lesbian. But her personal life is nearly impossible to reconstruct. Most of her work survives only in fragments. What can't be erased is the female-directed desire clearly present in the poetry itself. Greek culture could represent erotic feeling between women, but it left us far less evidence about what women's actual relationships looked like. Because men controlled most writing, law, and public record. Silence in the archive doesn't mean silence in real life. It often just means the person holding the pen wasn't paying attention. So did ancient Greece accept queer relationships? Some, absolutely. All, absolutely not. Male same-sex desire could be prestigious when it followed approved hierarchies. Equality between adults mattered far less than role and status. Marriage between citizen men was never an available institution, and family duty remained a powerful expectation. Greece didn't ask people to be straight. It asked them to obey a very specific social architecture. Rome inherited Greek art and literature, then rebuilt the architecture around something distinctly Roman. For a freeborn Roman man, masculinity centered entirely on control over himself, his household, and his social inferiors. Sexual activity didn't define a Roman man by the gender of his partner, nearly as sharply as it defined him by whether he occupied the dominant, active position. A citizen man could sleep with women or men without shifting into a different social category. His acceptable partners might include enslaved people or sex workers. The real danger was appearing passive, dependent, or controlled by desire. Rome cared less about your orientation than about your position in the hierarchy. This freedom, though, was deeply unequal. An enslaved person's body was legally at the mercy of an owner. Calling that acceptance turns domination into something it wasn't. Roman evidence contains genuine affection, but it also comes from a society where power often determined who could actually consent. Roman elites loved accusing political rivals of sexual passivity, portraying opponents as feminized or unable to govern themselves. The insult reveals which role threatened a citizen's status, not that all same-sex activity was condemned. Julius Caesar's enemies mockingly called him every woman's man and every man's woman, referencing rumors about a youthful relationship with a foreign king. The joke worked precisely because Caesar's alleged passive role could be weaponized against him. Emperors could bend the rules further because emperors had the useful status of being emperor. Hadrian's devotion to a young companion named Antinous is among the most famous male-male bonds from antiquity. After Antinous drowned in the Nile, Hadrian's grief transformed into something extraordinary. Cities honored Antinous with statues. A new city bore his name, and his cult spread across the empire. This was enormous public commemoration. But it wasn't an equal marriage between private citizens either. Hadrian held absolute power, and the surviving evidence tells us almost nothing about how Antinous himself actually felt. Travel east, and the categories shift again. Ancient China preserved a remarkable vocabulary for male love. The phrase, passion of the cut sleeve, comes from Emperor Ai of the Han Dynasty and his favorite, Dongxian. According to legend, Dongxian fell asleep across the emperor's sleeve, and rather than wake him, Ai cut the fabric away. Other phrases, like the shared peach, also came from stories of male favorites. A civilization doesn't invent multiple poetic euphemisms for something it can't recognize at all. Han court histories record emperors with male favorites alongside wives and dynastic duties. Male same-sex intimacy didn't necessarily form an exclusive identity. A ruler could love a man and still fulfill marriage obligations. Criticism usually focused less on the lover's gender and more on favoritism, corruption, or dangerous political influence near the throne. Family expectations still mattered enormously. Producing heirs and continuing ancestral lines placed intense pressure on men to marry women, regardless of who else they loved. Desire could be flexible. Inheritance was not. Ancient India complicates the map even further. Indian traditions contain stories of shifting gender, same-sex desire, and bodies resisting simple male-female categories. Deities that merge genders, figures in the Mahabharata whose gender changes. The Kama Sutra, composed in the early centuries CE, gives unusually direct attention to a third nature, people who desire men, described plainly as existing within the text's social and erotic world. But description isn't equality. Other legal and religious texts prescribed penalties for various non-procreative acts, varying by region, status, and era. Recognition existed. Liberation did not automatically follow. Go back further to Mesopotamia, and the evidence turns genuinely fascinating and unstable. Sumerian and Akkadian traditions around the goddess Inanna include ritual personnel who appear gender nonconforming in surviving texts, though exactly how to interpret their identities remains heavily debated by scholars. What the evidence shows clearly is that ancient Mesopotamians could assign real religious significance to people who crossed ordinary gender expectations. Difference could be sacred, though it could also be mocked or legally punished, depending on context. Ancient Egypt offers the most visually tempting case, and one of the least certain. In a tomb at Saqqara, two royal manicurists are shown embracing nose to nose, a pose typically used for intimate affection. They share a tomb, yet both are also shown with wives and children. They might have been lovers or brothers expressing an unusually close bond. The evidence is genuinely ambiguous. So, which ancient civilizations accepted queer relationships? The honest answer isn't a clean list of tolerant societies versus intolerant ones. It's a map of conditional doors. Greece opened one door for particular male bonds while closing others. Rome opened a door labeled dominance. China opened one near the imperial court, while keeping marriage pointed firmly toward lineage. India recognized more categories of gender and desire while surrounding them with unequal rules. The ancient world wasn't waiting for modern people to teach it that human desire is diverse. It already knew that. What it hadn't learned yet was how to separate difference from hierarchy.